Hey everyone, and welcome back to Love Hackers.
I'm Sophie Tanaka.
I'm Alex Carter, and we are your go-to guides for all things dating.
That's right.
Today, we're tackling a question that's been kind of popping up a lot in our inbox lately.
Oh, yeah.
It's the dynamics of age gap relationships,
Interesting.
specifically what attracts younger women to older men.
It's a fascinating topic.
It is.
And one that's often shrouded in stereotypes.
Yeah, it's easy to just jump to conclusions and assume it's all about money
Right.
or a desire for a father figure.
Yeah.
But, there's often a lot more to it than that.
Absolutely. The research suggests that when we're talking about healthy age gap relationships, the attraction often stems from things like a man's character, his life experience, and the sense of stability he can offer.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, think about it as we get older.
Uh-huh.
We tend to develop a stronger sense of self.
Mm-hmm.
We've had more time to figure out what we want in life, and we're often more financially secure.
For sure.
All of those things can be appealing regardless of age.
Exactly, and it ties into some basic psychological principles. Younger women might be drawn to the emotional maturity and security that some older men can provide, especially if they've had negative experiences with men their own age.
So it's not just about superficial things. It's about seeking a deeper connection based on shared values and a sense of compatibility.
Precisely, and it's important to remember that we're talking about tendencies here, not absolutes. Yeah. Every relationship is unique, and age is just one piece of the puzzle.
Okay, so let's get into some of the specific factors that might be at play here. One thing that often comes up is the classy factor. Apparently, older men often prioritize style and self-care, which creates an aura of sophistication.
That reminds me of a study I read recently about the role of confidence in attraction. It found that women, regardless of their own age, tend to be drawn to men who exude self-assurance, and that confidence often comes with age and experience. It's not just about the clothes, it's about the way a man carries himself.
So it's that George Clooney effect, that sense of effortless charm that comes from knowing who you are and what you want. I can definitely see the appeal in that.
Absolutely, and it's not just about looks either. It's about having a strong sense of self and being comfortable in your own skin.
Okay, that makes sense. And it ties into another point that often comes up, the idea that older men are more resourceful. And we're not just talking about money here, although financial stability can certainly be a factor.
Right. It's more about the fact that they've had more time to build a career, develop a wider network of connections, and acquire valuable life skills. Think about it. If you're a younger woman who's just starting out in life, having access to that kind of knowledge and experience can be incredibly beneficial.
It's almost like having a built-in mentor, someone who can offer guidance and support based on their own experiences.
Exactly, and let's not forget the potential for shared experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine traveling the world with someone who's already been there and done that, or learning a new skill from someone who's mastered it. Those shared experiences can create a really strong bond.
And I bet it makes for some pretty interesting dinner party conversations too. But speaking of things that can spark a conversation, another point that's often highlighted is the fact that older men tend to have more unique hobbies and interests. Maybe they're into collecting rare stamps, or they're gourmet chefs, or they've traveled the world and have a million stories to tell.
It goes back to that idea of having a strong sense of self. When you have the time and space to explore your passions, it makes you more interesting and well-rounded as a person, and that can be incredibly attractive to anyone, regardless of age.
It's like they say, a jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. I think it's about having that spark, that curiosity that keeps you engaged in life.
That's a great way to put it, and it's something that we can all cultivate regardless of our age. It's about being open to new experiences and constantly learning and growing.
Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about another factor that often comes up in discussions about age gap relationships, the idea that older men are less attached and more understanding.
This is a really interesting one. It's not necessarily that older men are less capable of forming strong attachments, but rather that they've often been through more relationships and have a better understanding of the ebb and flow of love and connection.
They've experienced heartbreak, they've learned from their mistakes, and they're less likely to sweat the small stuff that can be incredibly appealing to someone who's looking for a more stable and drama-free relationship.
I think this speaks to the importance of emotional intelligence in relationships. Being able to communicate effectively, handle conflict constructively, and prioritize emotional well-being are all essential skills, and those often come with time and experience.
So essentially, they've had more time to work on themselves and develop their emotional maturity.
Right, and that's not to say that younger men can't be emotionally mature, but it's something that often develops over time.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, I know this next part might be a bit sensitive, but it's something that often comes up in discussions about age gap relationships. The idea that some younger women might be seeking older men due to unresolved issues with their fathers.
It's an important point to acknowledge, but it's crucial to remember that healthy relationships require both partners to be emotionally whole and independent. No one should be trying to fill a void in someone else.
Absolutely. If you're entering into a relationship with the expectation that the other person will fix you or complete you, that's a recipe for disaster.
And it's important to note that this dynamic can exist in any relationship, regardless of age. It's about being self-aware and making sure you're entering into a relationship for the right reasons.
So it's all about being honest with yourself and your partner about what you're looking for in a relationship.
Exactly. And if you're noticing any red flags, it's important to address them early on.
Now, before we move on,
Mhm.
I think it's important to emphasize that we can't generalize about any group of people. Just because some younger women are attracted to older men for these reasons doesn't mean that all younger women or individual personalities and relationship dynamics are far more important than age.
Absolutely. We're talking about trends and possibilities here, not hard and fast rules.
So with that in mind, let's dive into some of the signs that a younger woman might be interested in an older man. What are some of the things that our listeners should be looking for?
Well, body language is always a good indicator. If you're noticing that a younger woman is making eye contact, leaning in when you talk, or finding excuses to touch you playfully, those could be signs that she's interested.
Okay, so it's about being attuned to those subtle cues, those nonverbal ways of communicating attraction. What else should our listeners be paying attention to?
Curiosity is another big one. If a younger woman is asking you personal questions that go beyond surface level chit chat, it could be a sign that she wants to get to know you better.
So it's not just about making small talk, it's about showing a genuine interest in your life and experiences.
Yeah.
I like that. What else?
Effort and attention are also key indicators. Does she remember details about your life? Does she make time for you even if she's busy? Does she mirror your language or mannerisms? Those could be signs that she's trying to build rapport and create a connection.
It's about going beyond the bare minimum and making an effort to show that you're invested in the interaction.
Exactly. And it's something that we should all be doing in our relationships, regardless of age.
So far, we've covered a lot of ground, from exploring the reasons behind the attraction to deciphering the subtle signs of interest. But before we move on to the next part of our deep dive, I want to touch on one more important aspect of this dynamic.
That sounds good. I think our listeners will find this particularly insightful.
Definitely. Let's talk about the physical aspect of age gap relationships, particularly when it comes to intimacy.
It's an area that's often surrounded by misconceptions and assumptions, but it's important to approach it with an open mind and a willingness to challenge those preconceived notions.
You know, there's this societal expectation that men peak sexually in their 20s or 30s, and that after that it's all downhill.
Right.
But is that really true?
Well, the research suggests that it's not as simple as that. While it's true that testosterone levels naturally decline with age, that doesn't necessarily mean that older men can't have fulfilling sex lives.
That makes sense. I mean, think about all the other factors that contribute to a satisfying sexual experience. Things like communication, emotional connection, and intimacy. Those things become even more important as we get older.
Exactly. And experience plays a huge role, too. An older man who's comfortable with his body, who knows what he likes and what his partner likes, can be an incredibly skilled and attentive lover.
It's not just about stamina, it's about knowing how to please your partner and create a truly intimate experience.
Right. And it's also about being open to exploring new things and adapting to the changes that naturally come with age.
So it's not about trying to recapture your youth. It's about embracing where you are in life and finding ways to make intimacy enjoyable and fulfilling at any age.
I think that's a really important message to get across. There's so much pressure on men to perform sexually, and that pressure can be really damaging.
It creates this sense of shame and inadequacy that can really impact a man's self-esteem in his relationships.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that everyone is different. What works for one person might not work for another.
It's about finding what feels good for you and your partner and communicating openly and honestly about your needs and desires.
Exactly. And if you're experiencing any challenges, don't be afraid to seek professional help. There are many resources available for men who are struggling with sexual health issues.
Okay, so we've talked about the physical aspects of intimacy, but there's another layer to this that I think is worth exploring: the appeal of an older man's living situation. And I'm not talking about a mansion or a yacht here.
Right. It's more about the fact that older men are often more established in life. They might own their own home, have a comfortable living space, and be able to offer a sense of stability and security.
And for a younger woman who might still be living with roommates or family, that can be incredibly appealing.
Absolutely. It's about having a place to relax, unwind, and just be yourself without feeling cramped or self-conscious.
It creates a sense of freedom and independence that can be really attractive.
And it can make the transition to a more serious relationship smoother if you're not worried about finding a new place to live or dealing with the logistics of moving in together.
Okay, that makes sense. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about something a little more intangible, the allure of mystery. The research suggests that older men, having lived fuller lives, often have more stories to tell, and they often share those stories, selectively building intrigue.
It's like unwrapping a present layer by layer. There's a sense of discovery and excitement that can be very captivating.
It makes you want to learn more, to delve deeper into their past and understand who they are at their core.
And that process of discovery can be incredibly bonding. It creates a sense of intimacy and connection that goes beyond the superficial.
It's like you're being let in on a secret, a glimpse into their inner world that can be very alluring. But let's be real, not all age gap relationships are smooth sailing. There are potential challenges that our listeners need to be aware of.
Absolutely. And it's important to address these challenges head on rather than sweeping them under the rug.
One of the biggest hurdles is the societal stigma that often surrounds age gap relationships. People might make assumptions, judge you, or even gossip behind your back.
It's unfortunate, but it's a reality that many couples face. And it can put a strain on the relationship, especially if you're not prepared to deal with the external pressures.
It's important to remember that you don't owe anyone an explanation for your relationship. You're not obligated to justify your choices to anyone but yourselves.
And it's important to have a strong support system in place, people who love and support you, regardless of the age difference.
Absolutely. Surrounding yourself with positive people who understand and respect your relationship is crucial. Another challenge that often comes up is navigating different life stages.
Right. If one partner is significantly older, they might be at a different point in their career. They might have children from a previous relationship, or they might be thinking about retirement while the other partner is still focused on building their future.
Those differences can create tension and conflict if they're not addressed openly. And honestly, it's important to have conversations about your goals, your expectations, and your vision for the future.
Communication is key in any relationship, but it's especially important in age gap relationships where those life stage differences can be more pronounced.
So it's about being proactive, having those tough conversations early on, and making sure you're both on the same page now. Before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, I want to address the elephant in the room, the stereotype of daddy issues. It's a term that's often used to dismiss or belittle women who are attracted to older men.
It's a harmful stereotype that perpetuates the idea that women are incapable of making their own choices and that they're always seeking validation from men.
It's important to remember that everyone has their own unique experiences and motivations for entering into a relationship.
And reducing someone's attraction to a simplistic stereotype is not only inaccurate, but also incredibly disrespectful.
It's about recognizing that people are complex individuals with their own stories, their own desires, and their own reasons for being attracted to certain types of people.
And judging someone based on their relationship choices is never okay.
So let's move beyond the stereotypes and focus on the individual dynamics within each relationship. After all, that's what truly matters.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, it's about two people connecting on a deeper level regardless of age.
And that's what we'll be exploring in the final part of our deep dive. We'll be discussing some tips and advice for both younger women and older men who are navigating age gap relationships. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into age gap relationships. We've covered a lot of ground already, from exploring the underlying reasons for attraction to addressing some of the common challenges that couples might face. Now, let's shift gears and talk about some practical tips and advice for navigating these relationships successfully.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. It's important to remember that every relationship is unique.
Right.
And what works for one couple might not work for another, but there are some general principles that can help guide you.
Absolutely. So let's start with some advice for the younger women out there who are dating older men. What are some things they should keep in mind?
Well, one of the most important things is to be confident in yourself and your worth. Don't let anyone make you feel like you're not good enough or that you're settling because you're dating an older man. Remember, you're bringing your own unique qualities and experiences to the table.
Yeah, that's so important. It's about owning your power and recognizing that you deserve to be in a relationship where you feel respected and valued. What else?
Be open and honest about your expectations and boundaries. Don't be afraid to have those tough conversations about your goals, your lifestyle, and your vision for the future. It's better to address any potential incompatibilities early on than to let them fester and create resentment down the road.
Communication is key in any relationship. But it's especially important when there's an age gap. You might be at different stages in life with different priorities and perspectives. Being able to communicate effectively and respectfully is essential for navigating those differences.
For sure. And don't be afraid to ask for what you need if you're feeling insecure or unsure about something. Speak up. A mature partner will be willing to listen and reassure you.
That's great advice. Now, let's turn our attention to the older men in the audience. What are some things they should keep in mind when dating younger women?
Well, first and foremost, be respectful of her age and her experiences. Don't patronize her or assume that you know better simply because you're older. She's an individual with her own thoughts, feelings, and perspectives.
It's about approaching the relationship as an equal partnership where both partners feel heard and valued. What else?
Be mindful of the power dynamic. It's natural for there to be a certain level of power imbalance in any relationship, but it's especially important to be aware of it when there's an age gap. Make sure you're not using your age or experience to control or manipulate her.
It's about being sensitive to the potential for her to feel intimidated or pressured and making sure that all decisions are made jointly and with her full consent. That's so crucial.
Mm.
What else comes to mind?
Be prepared for the possibility of judgment or criticism from others. Age gap relationships can still be somewhat taboo in some circles, so you might encounter negative reactions from friends, family, or even strangers. It's important to have a united front and to support each other through those challenges.
It's about remembering that your relationship is about you two, not about what other people think. As long as you're both happy and fulfilled, that's all that matters.
Exactly. And finally, don't forget to have fun. Age gap relationships can be incredibly rewarding and enriching. Embrace the differences, learn from each other, and enjoy the journey.
That's such great advice. It's about focusing on the positive aspects of the relationship and not letting negativity or societal pressures get in the way of your happiness. So to wrap things up, what's the biggest takeaway you would offer our listeners today, Sophie?
I would say trust your instincts. If you're feeling a genuine connection with someone regardless of age, don't let societal expectations or stereotypes hold you back. Explore that connection, authentically communicate openly, and see where it leads.
That's such wise advice, Sophie, and I think it applies to all relationships, not just age gap ones. Trust your gut, follow your heart, and don't be afraid to take a chance on love.
Yeah, exactly. And remember, if you're looking for more dating advice and relationship insights, be sure to tune in to Love Hackers,
Right.
wherever you get your podcasts.
We are Alex Carter.
And I'm Sophie Tanaka.
Don't forget to like, comment, and share this episode with all your friends. We'll see you soon.